Hi ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and dreamers of all ages. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about any CP questions you might have. I know of right now the fall CP is still happening, so I wanted to get any questions you might have. I know for my CP I didn't have any videos about custodial. I know there's a few up now, but I wanted to get into the custodial role, housing, friendships, anything like that you might face during the CP, and hopefully I will answer your questions if my video wants to focus. Today you might notice we are not in a park, we are in my apartment. Since it's a Disney video and Disney is still not open, I figured I would just film here in my apartment. Filming a lot in Universal lately, but it is a Disney video, so didn't want to film in Universal. Some things to note, I do have a dog, and as you have seen in the beginning of the video, she does not like to stand still or be quiet or do any of that stuff. I tried recording yesterday. That was why my outfit is different from that video, but some things happened, so I couldn't record yesterday. Thing number two, I do have a roommate. He is kind of loud, so you might hear him. If you do, I will try my best to get around that in the video. Before I get started with the questions, I did want to address one thing right above my head, Splash Mountain. So yesterday morning, Disney did announce officially that Splash Mountain is being rethemed to Princess and the Frog. And I am a huge Brer Bear person. I have a Brer Bear on my bed right now, one of his big plushies. And I love the character Brer Bear. I'm sad to see him go, but Tiana is one of my favorite Disney princesses. I think she would be about ranked number 3. I have a Disney princess video coming eventually, so just keep an eye out for that, and I will explain more as to why I love her. But I'm very curious to see how Disney does it. I have a lot of hopes for this ride because I love Splash Mountain. It's one of my favorites. So hopefully they will treat it well. I know as a Frontierland cast member, Splash needed an update. Like, behind the scenes, a lot of stuff was going on with Splash and it just needed an update in general. So I am glad to hear that it is Princess and the Frog and that Tiana is finally getting a place to shine. My phone is not focusing, so I apologize for that, but we'll get around it. We'll figure out this video, and let's get started with some questions. I also have my laptop down here, so if you guys see me looking down, it's at questions and notes I've taken about some of the questions, so don't mind that, but let's get started. The first question is, what was my role and my location? So I was MK West Custodial. When I started May 20th was when my program started. I was Fall Advantage. What West Custodial was at the time was Adventureland and Liberty Square were put together, and Frontierland. I was mainly Frontierland. I did not work anywhere else unless I asked for it. In that first part of my CP, when I did the extension, MK West changed to Frontierland, Adventureland, Main Street, and the TTC, which is right before you go into the park. It's where the monorail and ferry boat picks up. It's where parking is. All of that became MK West. So yes, I was mostly Frontier. The second part of my CPA, I worked a lot of Main Street, but I will get to that in a few questions. Next question is, was I excited for my role? And I was very excited because I heard a lot of good things about Custodial, but I was also very nervous. Sorry if you can hear my dog in the corner. She's upset because she got put in her cage because she likes to bark at people. But was I excited for my role? I was also very nervous because when I first did my CP, I was one of the people that watched a lot of CP videos, watched a lot of these question videos, and when I started there was no custodial videos except for one, and she discussed custodial very briefly and very just short answers, so I had no idea what I was going into other than the good word of other custodials before me. So I was very nervous, but I ended up loving it. Custodial is the best role, if you ask me. Alright, so now we are getting to housing questions. So it asked, what apartment was I living in? I was in Patterson. I was in a 3-bedroom, 6-person, so each person, there was 2 beds in each room. It really felt like an apartment. I really liked Patterson for what I spent for it. It was nice, other than you could hear through the walls, which was a little annoying because if you were having a conversation in the living room, we could hear it in the bedroom and vice versa. If we were in the bedroom having like a private conversation, you could hear it out in the living room. So that was frustrating, and it was very little privacy, but other than that, that's all of the apartments from what I've gathered, so you can't really avoid it at CP housing. Yeah. When did I find out my complex? I found out, I believe, the week before I moved down. So they will send you your itinerary, and it will have your role, and it will have your apartment complex. It does not tell you apartment complex number, building, roommates, nothing. It just tells you the apartment complex. It's already in your apartment when you move in. My apartment, we got a checklist before, as we were moving in, we got a checklist of what was in our apartment. My apartment didn't have anything, and other than like maybe we had, let's see, I have it written down, so I'm gonna be looking down, I apologize. We had one pot, we had utensils, we had plates, bowls, and cups. That was all we had. We had to go out, because what they give you in the apartments aren't the best quality of things. It's just a starter set for your entire roommates. We had to go out and buy pans ourselves. We had to go out and get a lot of our own stuff. It wasn't necessary, it was just we didn't want to use the housing's provided stuff because they weren't the best. So yeah, keep that in mind if you're moving in. When do you learn who your roommates are? So my group of CPs, we were allowed to group up with 2 people. It changes for each CP group, so don't think you're guaranteed 2 people. I've known groups that I've seen that have been 0 people that they're able to link up with. I've seen 1, I've seen 3. It really just depends on your CP group. Mine had 2 people, and it wasn't guaranteed that those were your 2 people. I linked with nobody. I went in blind, and I found out who all my roommates are as we all moved in. Even when you get your key, when you get your stuff, they don't tell you who your roommates are. You learn that as people are moving in. So it was a time, it was an experience, but I ended up loving all of my roommates. I got a really good situation. Not all situations are like that, but it was great for us. I loved it. The next question was, did I know my roommates before moving in, and what was it like moving in? I already kind of discussed this, but no, I did not know my roommates beforehand. I really thought it was like being in a college dorm where I didn't know my roommates before moving into my college dorm. It was completely blind. It's just like living in a college dorm, to be honest, except it's more of an apartment style if your college dorm isn't like that already. The next question is, what was your biggest problem you faced with your roommates? My biggest problem, we all had different ideas on how to keep the apartment clean. I didn't think I was more on the cleanly side, but after living in my apartment, I did like things to be more cleanlier than they were. It became an issue, but we all worked through it. We're all adults. You have to remember that. You can't just, if you want things to end up well, you can't start a lot of drama. You have to like be able to willing to talk to people and get your point across while also listening to their point of view, which was a learning curve for all of us, but we managed to get through, and it was fine. And again, I love them at the end of the program. So we had our ups and downs. You have to face that with people, especially people you don't know, 5 other girls you don't know, or boys, whatever your roommate situation is, you're gonna face issues. And that's just the truth of it. Would you recommend CP housing? It depends. If it's your first program, I stayed in CP housing only for the first part of my program. So I started May 20th, and I was there, I think January 27th was when we moved out, and I got my own apartment. And the thing with CP housing, no matter where you live, it's expensive compared to what you are making. And you have to remember that. There were some weeks that I was scheduled bare minimum, so I got $0 on my paycheck. They'll schedule you just enough some weeks so that you can pay for your rent. When I left CP housing, usually my average for paychecks was about $150. I went from $150 to $450 a week just leaving CP housing. But it is a great experience for you to meet people when you're first coming to Disney. When you're not as comfortable with Disney, it's better in that experience, I think, because then you do get to meet people, you get to make friends, and it's so much easier to make friends in CP housing. But it really depends on your situation. I personally would recommend your first part of the CP staying in housing, and the second part moving out of housing. That's what I did, that's what I enjoyed, that's what I liked, and that's what just worked for me. Oh, my camera wants to kind of focus. So the next question is, would I recommend CP transportation? I had to take CP. I personally do not have a license, so I had to take CP transportation when I lived in CP housing. And TransDev, if you've ever taken Disney transportation, CP transportation is not that. Let's just start with that. It's a time. I know they're changing routes right now. I don't think they're changing companies per se, but I know they're changing the bus routes. Every time I would get on the bus, it would be crowded. Unless you were lucky enough to have a mid-shift or get off in the middle of the day, you were on a crowded bus. For times, especially for Halloween shifts and the first Villains Night during the fall CP, I would get off about 2 to 3 in the morning, and you would have to wait so long because all the MK CPs are getting off. So I sometimes would have to wait 2.5 hours just to get on the bus after my shift. And I would have to start early the next day. So there are times I've only gotten like 4 hours of sleep just because of the CP bus. There are times I've only gotten 2 hours of sleep because of the CP bus. I would keep that in mind. I would definitely recommend your own transportation. CP transportation is not the best, and it takes you about an hour to get anywhere. Anyways, one time, the worst story I've had with the CP buses, I was never on the buses that broke down. I was never on the buses that caught on fire, and there was quite a few. The first one I had, it was Florida heat, so it was about 90 degrees outside, 90-ish. In the back of the bus, there was no air conditioning, and we were all packed in together for about an hour and a half ride. And it was going from Chatham to West Clock, which is the last stop, I think. Yeah, it's the last stop on the A bus, I want to say. A or B bus. There was no air conditioning, and in the back of the bus, you have that giant, I want to say I don't know exactly what it is. It's a huge grate that, pushes out heat. So you had no AC, you had that pushing out heat, you had us all packed in our costumes together, and it was, by the end of it, we were all sweating. There were some people that needed to have a safety break, which, once you're in the CP, you will understand the 4 keys, and that safety is number 1. They will force that into your mind. But a lot of us, we had to take breaks because once we got off the bus, we were all dehydrated, we were all dizzy because of the heat. It was bad. I would just keep that stuff in mind. Keep the stories you hear about TransDev in mind when you decide whether you want to bring a car or whether you want to take the bus. Also, I was the only CP that had 6 a.m. shifts in the fall program. I was the only CP on opening shifts. And when I had to leave for my opening shifts, I would have to leave at 3 a.m. in order to get to my shift on time. Usually my shift started around 5:36. So leaving at 3, especially on the nights that I closed the night before, and I would have to get the CP bus back and the CP bus there, it was tiring, and I would much rather have preferred my own transportation, but as I didn't have it, I couldn't. Definitely would recommend your own transportation. Looks like my next few questions are about location, about work, about shifts, and stuff like that. So the first question is, did you like your location? I, again, was Frontierland. I absolutely loved Frontierland. It is the smallest of the lands. Well, actually, now Liberty Square might be, but as of right now, I still believe Frontier is the smallest of the lands, and it was fantastic. I loved it. I loved the people I worked with. I loved my coordinators. I loved my leaders. It was just a fun time in general, and I would not recommend any other place except for Frontier. There are people that did hate Frontier. There were people that loved Frontier. I was one of the ones that loved it, and I stood by Frontier very, very fiercely. To this day, I will still stand by Frontier very fiercely. So I tried moving my camera back a little, just so we'll see if that helps with the focus at all, because I know the focus keeps going in and out, and there's nothing I can do about that right now. So again, I apologize. Hopefully that works a little better. The question is, can you get scheduled in different parks or areas? For Custodial, yes and no. Custodial, you can't get scheduled to other parks unless you are deployed, and deployment is very rare. I know with deployment, they deployed a lot of us to ESPN, but they asked us beforehand if we wanted to go to ESPN. I was personally not one of the ones that wanted to work ESPN, so I didn't go, so I was never deployed there. But you can pick up shifts in other parks, and you can be scheduled different areas in your park. So I was West Custodial, so I could be scheduled anywhere from Frontier, Adventureland, Main Street, and TTC. TTC being where the monorails were, where I explained earlier. It's not bad. I personally like staying in Frontier, but it was nice getting other areas. This is where all have you worked? And let's see, in Magic Kingdom, I have worked every land except for Tomorrowland. So Fantasy, Liberty Square, Adventureland, Frontierland, Main Street, and TTC. I never worked Tomorrowland. It was the only land I never worked, and I did not want to work in Tomorrowland. And then I picked up a lot of shifts in Epcot, so I really liked Future World. I liked Future World West, which is where Figment is. It's where the land is, Soarin', Nemo, all that stuff was Future World West. And that was my favorite place to pick up outside of Magic. I've also worked at World Showcase and Epcot, and I never picked up Studios or Animal Kingdom shifts. So I don't know how they are, but I've heard mixed reviews about both. Is it hard to get shifts? No, it is not hard at all for Custodial, because we are a global, as long as you're not for a park CP, you have to pick up within parks. You cannot pick up in resorts. If you're a resort CP, you cannot pick up in parks. You have to work at resorts. I was a park CP, so I could work at any of the parks that I wanted to, and we have a Facebook group where you can just go and put your shift up if you want to trade it, or you can take other shifts if you want. The only problem was fitting those shifts in your schedule sometimes was a little difficult, because you couldn't work over, I want to say 40 hours was our cap, and sometimes CPs were right on that cusp, and you can't give away shifts if you're under 28 hours, I want to say. You can't go underneath of either 28 or 32, I can't remember exactly. So it's hard getting those shifts sometimes because it wouldn't fit into your schedule, or you couldn't work more than 5 days. You had a 5-day limit. So I knew some people that were able to pick up a 6-day. I was never able to. You have to go into the hub, or you can go to your leader to give away shifts, but the hub never let me pick up a 6-day, which I know some people were able to. So I think that one's a circumstance thing. Whether the hub's willing to let you do that or not. What were your hours like? So during my Fall Advantage program, I was getting about 50 hours per week, depending on the week. Holidays, you're going to get the most hours. So Christmas time, Thanksgiving, Halloween, that's when you're going to get the most hours. And those shifts are great. They're fun. I'm going to talk about those later. Just give me a second. But those shifts, they're going to be your longest shifts. They're going to be your longest weeks. Spring CPs came in, I got cut a lot of my hours. It was very hard for CPs to get over 28 hours, just because there were so little hours to give out. I was one of the lucky ones. I had 33 hours per week usually. I never went below 30, which is saying something, because a lot of the CPs only got about 28 hours. So they weren't making enough to really support themselves. So definitely come to Disney with money in advance, if you can. If you can't, it's fine, but I would definitely recommend having some money beforehand. What shifts would I work? That is really interesting, because during my program, we had summer alumni. And that is a program that takes place every 2 years, I believe, where they're inviting old CPs back just for 2 months during the summer in order to work. When my CPs were here, I was working all night shifts. I would close every single night. But when they started leaving, and we had ICPs, which are International College Program students, during the summer we had our UK and European CPs, and once they started leaving in August, I started getting a lot more mid shifts. Once the holidays came, and it is very rare for this to happen to CPs, once the holidays came, I was moved to opening shifts, and I was the only CP on Christmas and Christmas Eve that had morning shifts. I had 6 a.m. shifts where everybody else was closing. I'm so thankful for that. I didn't have to work New Year's. New Year's Eve specifically, I did not have to work. I was so grateful for that. But that is very rare among CPs. Usually you're going to be working those holidays, and usually you're going to be on closing shifts. If you can hear my dog, she's annoyed and hitting her bowl, so I apologize for that. But it is very rare for CPs to have those opening shifts or mid shifts. Usually you're going to be on a closing shift. I can't speak for other roles, but that's what I saw within Custodial. That's what I saw a lot of parking people had to deal with. Some merchandise had to close in quick service. Speak for all roles, but the roles I did see, that's what I saw. What was your longest shift? My longest shift, I believe, was 16 hours. It was about 16 to 18 hours. It was so long because Frontier gets really hot. I don't know if it's because of the red pavement. I don't know if it's because of all the hills. I don't know why Frontier is the hottest land, but it is. And it drives me insane. And it was a 16-hour shift just in Frontier, which was great because I had friends working that day, but it gets exhausting. I would definitely pace yourself if you can. Usually you don't have any say in your shifts, but yeah, anything over 8 hours and anything over 40 hours too, I didn't mention before, you get overtime. So when I started my CP, we got moved up to $12 an hour, I want to say. We got to push up to $11 an hour. And then later on in my CP, we got moved up to 12. And then anything over that, I believe, was 16. So if you worked over 8 hours or if you worked over 40 hours in a week, you would get paid $16 an hour for each of those hours. So a 16-hour shift was nice. What are party shifts like? Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. Party shifts are villains nights, party shifts are Halloween parties, Christmas parties, all of that stuff. I loved and hated party shifts. I loved the Halloween party shifts because I usually was on parade, so I would clean up parade. Afterwards, I would get to be backstage with all of the performers, and we would all just like joke around, and it was great. Party shifts are how you make them out to be. I loved them. I loved the Halloween party shifts. I did not love the Christmas party shifts. The reason being, I'm not the biggest Christmas person in general. Let's just say that. Halloween is my favorite holiday. Christmas is not. So Christmas party shifts, they were long. There was a lot of us, so there wasn't a lot to do. It was just a time. I was usually bored during Christmas party shifts. I only worked 2 though. The parade is so long, you're just waiting for it because it splits Frontier in 2. So if you're on one side of Frontier and you have a task on the other side, you cannot get to it until that parade is over, and it is such a long parade. And I think they extended it this year, so I don't know what next Christmas parties are going to be like. This year they extended it, and it was a lot. Our Halloween parties were always fun though. For Custodial, we got to play character bingo, where if we saw any guest let me back up. You guys played character bingo. And what character bingo is guests would come to the park dressed up as characters. It was Halloween, we would let them dress up. It's the only time of the year that we let guests dress up if you're an adult. So we would all get these little bingo cards, and what the bingo cards do is they would have different Disney characters on it, and if we saw a guest with that costume, we would go out to the guest and ask them to sign, either with their name or with the character's name, and we would turn that into base at the end, and whoever won with the most cards got a prize, which was so fun. And it was a lot to see the kids, how excited they would be, because you would recognize their character, you would ask them for the autograph, which is what they've been asking characters for all day. So having them be asked for an autograph, it makes them really excited, and it's super cute and super fun. And I know a lot of the Custodial members enjoyed it. I would recommend, if you do pick up a party shift, if you're Custodial, pick up Frontierland, Liberty Square, or Main Street, because you are going to see the parade go through. Depending on where you're at, you can't work, so you get to watch the parade. I would definitely recommend that at least once for one of your party shifts. How do guests treat Custodial cast members? And I specifically said Custodial cast members because each cast member gets treated very, very differently. So with Custodial cast members, we never really had any problems with guests from what I saw. A lot of guests were very thankful towards us. They would give us stuff. They would thank us. They would just be very appreciative of where I saw being Frontierland, I worked mostly with Big Thunder Mountain and Splash Mountain, and both of them broke down a lot. So I would see a lot of guests complaining or arguing or yelling at cast members for attractions, but nobody would really ever have a problem with Custodial, which was really nice because we got to do our job without that much complaints, without worrying about how the guests felt. It was very nice. Other things in Custodial that I did not expect. I did not expect what we call BBP. BBP is bloodborne pathogens, so anything dealing with blood, Custodial has to clean up. And for some reason, I did not think about blood when I came into Disney. I did not expect to clean up blood. They weren't bad, but I just wasn't expecting it. What is the hardest part about Custodial? For us, it's, I would say, banana boats. Banana boats are what we push our trash in. Sometimes guests will not move. They'll stand and stop right in front of your banana boat, and you can't really maneuver that well around them. Especially in Frontier. We have a lot of hills in Frontier. It gets very hot in Frontier. So pushing that banana boat around is not the most fun thing you can do. Also, 101s. 101s is weather shutdowns. Oh, my hair's in my face, sorry. 101s are weather shutdowns. Anything that does not include lightning is not a 101. So it can be pouring down rain, and we would still be expected to work, especially in an all-white costume as a female. That was not the most fun thing. But as long as there's not lightning, you're still expected to work. So we are expected to push our banana boats. We're expected to still do trash runs. Cleaning up popcorn during rain is the worst thing I've ever experienced, but we got through it. It was still great. I love Custodial. Don't let this put you off. It's the best role in my opinion. What is the worst thing you've had to do as Custodial? For me, I got called to a lot of BBPs. I wouldn't be called for vomit. I wouldn't be called for urine. I wouldn't be called for any defecation, but I would be called for blood a lot. And the worst one I experienced, I'm not going to go into details for that guest's privacy and information. I don't want to put them out there. But there was blood all over the Splash Companion restroom, and it was a time. It was a time. And it didn't take me that long to clean up. It was just because there's so much. That's probably the worst one. Also, there was a BBP at Country Bear Jamboree that I had to clean up. With BBPs, I don't want to go into too much because it is a guest issue. It was a guest personal issue, so I will not go into the specifics. But I will say that those two were my worst ones. So, the next question is, how free are you in your role? Custodial, I feel like, is the most freedom you're going to get within any role. We each get a phone. It's an iPhone. It will have the app DClean installed in it. So whatever DClean sends you, that's going to be your task. And as soon as you finish your task, you can roam the land. You can be wherever you want in the land, as long as you are still in your land, as long as you are still doing work. So I was able to walk around Frontierland whenever I wouldn't have anything, and there would be days where I would only get one assignment for the entire day. And I was free to walk around and do whatever I wanted. I could talk to guests, I could pin trade. I was free to do whatever I wanted. Now, if you do have a declean assignment, you have to do it within a certain amount of time. They are not difficult. It is your job. You just go out and do it, and then you are free to go about your day. It really depends on where you work, how free you are. I know some parks, when I worked at World Showcase, you were allowed to group up with people. You were allowed to walk around in pairs of two, and nobody would really bother you. I know in MK it is not that way. You typically have to work on your own. It is a very independent role. You are allowed to stop to talk to cast members, but it is not encouraged. Did I like my leaders, coordinators, and cast members? Before I get into that, I'm going to explain what each one is. The leader is kind of the one that oversees everything. The coordinator is basically your equivalent of a manager, and the cast members are just other coworkers. I absolutely loved all of them. I loved my leaders and I loved my coordinators. Both of them were very understanding when I came to them with problems. I know people out there who don't like their coordinators or leaders, but mine never caused any problems with me. I was always able to freely talk to them if I needed them. They were all very helpful and listened whenever I had an issue, and it was fantastic. And I loved my coworkers. They were all great. I don't have any complaints in that area. Did I ever get tired of the CP? Yes. So when the summer alumni and the ICPs were leaving, I was getting really burnt out. We were getting a lot more hours because we were down people. Fall hadn't come in yet. So it was just whoever was here for Fall Advantage, and we were getting very burnt out by the end. But then the new CPs came in. My schedule in that in-between area was very unpredictable. Some nights I would be closing, and the next morning I would be opening, as long as there was an 8-hour window. Because if you work anything less than an 8-hour window, you get double back, which means you get overtime for each hour that you work. As long as you're in that 8-hour window, you were free to work. So some nights I'd be closing, the next day I'd be opening, and as we said with CP transportation, that was not ideal. During those times, I learned that the Facebook page was my best friend. There are always people who are willing to take your hours. Part-time doesn't get that many hours. They're willing to snatch up your hours as soon as you put them out. I preferred trading for different parks, and I learned once I was in different parks, I was feeling less burnt out. I think it was being in the same location every single day was what was burning me out. But once I started working Epcot, once I started working Main Street, I started getting less of that burnout feeling because I was exposed to new areas and new people, and I loved that. My next question is, did you get to work with people from around the country and around the world? Yes. So the way that ICP is set up in the International College Program is usually there's an ICP for every group. When I came in, it was a lot of the people from the UK, a lot of Europeans, and a lot of the French were there. I got to meet them first. They were my first ICP group. And then next, it was a lot of the Brazilians. There are a lot of Brazilians that come to Disney World during the summer, which is why it's very important and why they emphasize in your interview, are you able to give instructions or give directions to people who don't speak your language? Because you are going to come across a lot of the Brazilians. And they come in, the ICP groups come in around Christmas time, around January is when a lot of the ICP Brazilian groups come in. So you do get to meet a lot of those people. I became really close friends with some of them. I still have my best friends in the UK right now, and it's great. As for CPs, you're going to meet people from around the country. You're going to meet people with different mindsets, people with different beliefs, people from different cultures, and it's great, and I love it, and you have to be really open-minded for this program. So keep that in mind when you are here. What program should I do? So it depends. It really depends on you. If you want to be home for the holidays, don't do fall. If you don't mind, then do fall. My favorite shifts were the Halloween parties where I got to hang out with my friends, and we got to watch the parade go by, and we just got to hang out. Those are my favorite shifts, and you don't get those in spring. But you're willing to sacrifice that time with your families. More hours in the fall, but you can get burnt out faster. And you have to remember that too, but I think the parties really make it worth it if you're one of the cast members who works inside the parks during the parties. Spring is more relaxed, but you have issues finding hours. So like I said, I don't know if it was because they overhired CPs for this last spring or what it was, but it was hard to find hours. Even on the Facebook page, as soon as you put up a shift, people were willing to snatch it. And it wasn't as many trades going on, it was more people trying to get their hours. I think, in my opinion, if you're going to do a 2021 program, it is the 50th anniversary in 2021 of Disney World. And there are going to be big changes, it's going to be very busy, and I would keep that in mind for your program. Keep in mind what's opening when. Say Tron, I still don't know the Tron opening date, but if you want to miss Tron, or if you want to make it to Tron, you don't want to miss it. I would keep those dates in mind when you're applying for the CP. So the next questions are very random, but I just read the next question, and it is, what are relationships like in the CP? Is there a lot of hooking up? Yes, there's a lot of hooking up in the CP. I personally never took in that because I just didn't. I wasn't. I've had that time. The time has passed me, and now I did meet my boyfriend through the CP. We are still together. Our relationship grew through Disney, but if how do I explain? There's a lot of different groups in the CP. We'll say that there are a lot of different people in the CP. So depending on what circle you're in, you're gonna see either more hooking up or less hooking up. I know my first group of the CP, the summer alumni, the ICPs, they were just really here to hang out and enjoy their summer. So I didn't really see as much hooking up there, but when the fall program came in, I saw a lot of people hooking up. No, do what you want to do on the CP. Let's say that. Be safe, but do what you want to do. If you are in a relationship, and I speak from personal experience, if you are in a relationship, especially if it's somebody in a different role, for example, my boyfriend is parking, I was custodial. Parking gets a lot of hours. They got the most hours of anyone that I've seen, and it can be hard to just, you guys have conflicting schedules, and it's hard to make it work, but if you really care about that person, you can make it work. And there's going to be a lot of strain on your relationship, just remember that, but you'll be able to make it through. It's okay. If you're really determined, if that's really what you want, you can make it through. Is it hard to save money on your program? Yes. Yes, it is, because one, you don't make a lot of money on the program to begin with, and then if you want to buy stuff, I came in with the mindset that I was going to stay here and I wanted to make those memories, and I spent a lot of money, but I spent it towards making memories. So there were times that I would save up my paychecks and we would go stay at resorts for a night. We would just go and have fun and enjoy what we could when we could. Once I moved out of housing, it was so much easier to save because I was actually getting money in my paychecks. So again, that's another thing to consider when you're thinking about CP housing. I went from $150 a week to about $450 a week. So it became so much easier to save money. What are cast previews like? I got to go to the cast preview for Galaxy's Edge, and I got to go for Mickey's Runaway Railway. And both of them were so fun. So after December 5th, when Galaxy's Edge opened, we were not able to get into Hollywood Studios as cast members. Whether you were CP, whether you were a coordinator, no one was allowed into Hollywood Studios if you were a cast member up until the park closed. So for Mickey's Runaway Railway, it was the only time the spring CPs were able to get into Hollywood Studios, so I know they took advantage of it. That was fun because you get to ride the ride before anybody else. My favorite was the Galaxy's Edge preview. I was not a Star Wars fan when I went. I am now a Star Wars fan, but at the time I had no idea what was going on. So we had 3 different preview options. You had the basic preview, which is the one I got because I didn't sign up in time because the rest filled up. So the one I got was the basic preview. You got to go in, you got to ride Smuggler's Run. Rise was not yet open. Rise opened later. You got to ride Smuggler's Run as many times as you wanted. You got to take whatever picture you wanted. It was all, I want to say all the cast preview pictures you got for free. But it was nice. The second option was you get to build your own lightsaber. You had to pay the $200 still, but you got to do that experience. And the third one was you got to go into Oga's Cantina, which I did not do, and I love Oga's Cantina now, so I wish I did that. And people who spent the entire day in Galaxy's Edge, which you're not on a time limit, you get a time period, but you don't have to necessarily leave when that time period's up, which is nice. What are blockouts like? Lockouts mean that you can't go into a certain park or area as a cast member. And like I said, Hollywood Studios was blocked out from December 5th until park closed. So I knew people who their favorite park was Hollywood Studios. Mine was Animal Kingdom, and Animal Kingdom never has blackouts. But people who Studios was their favorite, you couldn't go into Studios. And that goes for cast members. So if you're a cast member at Studios, you couldn't even get into the park. Or else you could face termination if you got caught using your Blue ID or going into the park. Any of that stuff, you would have been instantly terminated. So not worth the risk to me. What are holidays like at Disney? Busy. I don't know why everyone comes to the parks for holidays, because you're just gonna be waiting in lines. It's terrible to get anywhere. I don't recommend coming for holidays. It's just gonna ruin your day. From a lot of guests I talk to, don't come during the holidays. It's where you're gonna come across the most angry guests, but it's where you're coming across most of your hours. So remember that. A lot of the angry guests I did face as custodial was during the holiday season, just because they expect a lot from Disney, and Disney can't necessarily promise wait times or like fast passes, and that was what a lot of people were mad about, because they couldn't do as many rides as they wanted to, because they were spending all their day in lines. The worst day of the year to work at Magic Kingdom is New Year's Eve. It's New Year's Eve. I don't know if you've seen pictures or what Main Street looks like after fireworks on New Year's, but and thankfully I did not have to work New Year's Eve. I don't know what blessed me that day, but I did not have to work New Year's Eve. And after talking to my friends who had to work on New Year's Eve, I am so grateful I did not. It is the worst year you will come across. You think Christmas is bad, wait till New Year's Eve. New Year's isn't bad. I've heard the first is not that bad. It's New Year's Eve for New Year's fireworks that it gets bad. Is it hard leaving the Disney bubble during your CP? Yes. I don't think I ever left Disney the first part of my CP, because I was stuck using CP transportation because I didn't have a car. And CP transportation, the only place off Disney property it takes you is Walmart and Publix. So remember that when you're considering transportation, because you cannot leave the Disney bubble. Also, I was always working, so it was hard for me to go anywhere else because I would be working that day, or on my days off, I would be too exhausted to go anywhere. So I didn't want to leave. I had a Universal Pass, but I've never used it the first part of my CP. So I don't have a car. I didn't have a car. If you have friends with cars, it's great because then you can leave. But if you don't, you're stuck to CP. You're just stuck. What festival was my favorite at Epcot? I think I got to see every festival. I think Food and Wine was my favorite. Canada had the best food. The filet mignon, chef's kiss, because it was perfect. Shout out to Flower and Garden because they had the frushi, and the frushi is fantastic if you can get the right batch. Sometimes it's a little stale, but we still love frushi. Why did I not film as much as I said I was going to on my program? I was always working. And when I wasn't working, I was hanging out with friends who necessarily didn't want to be on camera. So out of respect to them, I wouldn't film. Just burnout. I didn't feel like filming because I wanted to relax. I just wanted to hang out on my days off. It's completely understandable, but hopefully I'll start filming more once the parks reopen. Getting termed. I was termed. But I was termed with all the other CPs. So on March 14th, March 14th, all the CPs of spring found out we were getting termed. It sucked. Like, it really did suck because I only had 2 months left in my program. I was planning on staying with the company. We were termed without any warning. It was just an email that was sent out mass to all of us. Some people were at work. I was not, thankfully. I was at home. But some people found out during work that they were being termed. It all just came out at once. And it was the day before our last day that we all found out we were getting termed. And it was a time. I cried a lot. A lot of my coworkers cried a lot. It was a time. Hopefully there won't be. It was our first CP group in Disney history that they've had to do that. Hopefully it will never happen again. It was not fun. I'll just leave it at that. My last question, how do I make the most out of my program? I personally made a bucket list and I forgot about it, and I found it maybe like a week ago, and I was like, oh, I didn't do anything on my bucket list, but it was fine because I enjoyed my program so much. I don't regret anything. Like, I loved my program. I would recommend it to anybody. Even if you make a bucket list, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to follow it, because sometimes you don't know what you want to do until you're here. Spend time with friends on your days off. It doesn't have to be at Disney. Just remember those friendships are very important. Spend time with your friends as much as you can. It helps with burnout. Like, it just makes the program so much better. A lot of people say push yourself to go to the parks on your days off, and I disagree. I agree going to the parks as much as you can, but there are days that you do have to take time for yourself and just relax, and it's okay. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about pushing yourself if you're not ready for it. Burnout, I've said it multiple times in this video, is very real, and if you don't take time for yourself, it's going to happen to you. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. You'll find out things you do like, you'll find out things you don't like, and it's stuff that you never knew about yourself before. So definitely push yourself out of that comfort zone. And try to build yourself as much as you can on this program. It is a once-in-a-lifetime program for some people, and you will learn so much about yourself. And do as much as you can. Learn as much as you can. Take every opportunity you can to learn. Sorry, but take every opportunity you can to learn. And yeah, just have fun with it. Like, honestly, it's Disney. Have fun. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.